I am delighted to be involved with the 2020 South African String Convention. I'm very much looking forward to watching and learning from all the other faculty members. I think it will be a real treat. So I'm going to talk today about the point of contact, which in essence is where do we bow on the cello. I think a lot of this is applicable on the violin, the viola, the bass as well, but obviously I'm focusing on the cello. So where do we bow in different situations? Obviously it's very much an introduction to the topic, and there is a lifetime's worth of research on any of these topics, as I'm sure you'll all appreciate, so do some additional reading. But anyway, I hope you enjoy what I have to offer. And yeah, I think to start though, we probably need to find out what actually is happening when the bow is drawn across the string. So the bow hair has teeth on it. Okay, lots of little teeth. So the bow grabs the string and pulls it, and then it slips, pulls it some more, and then it slips. This is hopefully quite visible. Let me try again. Yeah. So that is in effect what is happening when we bow on a cello string, or violin string, double bass string, viola string, etc. So I first saw David Finkel conducting this experiment, I think on one of his YouTube videos, where he was introducing what bowing actually does. I hope that is of interest. I think just watching the bow being drawn across the string, the piece of string, I think it explains perhaps why the thicker string, the C string, generally requires a point of contact further away from the bridge, because we need to coax it into getting going a little bit more easily, and there's certainly more flexibility away from the bridge to do that, you know, where it's actually very, very stiff over there, so you're not going to get the thing oscillating. So yeah, I think that's quite an interesting experiment, as I mentioned, from David Finkel originally, but I've seen it elsewhere as well. So yeah, so anyway, in the art of violin playing, Carl Flesch, violin pedagogue, speaks quite a bit about the point of contact. There's a quote from the Art of Violin Playing, which is: the proximity to the bridge is indicated for slow bows, forte dynamics, and high positions. Proximity to the fingerboard is indicated for moving bows, piano dynamics, and lower positions. So I think that is a fairly nice summary. Generally speaking, when it comes to the cello though, from beginners all the way through to advanced players, I generally find players, including myself, struggle perhaps more with playing near enough the bridge in higher sustained passages. I think this sort of focus of sound, which is required for higher playing and more sustained passages, is something that can take a little while to find. Yeah, it's certainly something that is something I always think about in this particular passage, which I'm going to play now. Many of you will know exactly what this is. It's a roll-up piece of paper, and I'm sure many of you have had your teachers, past, present, etc., place a piece of paper like so, in order to encourage you to bow below the i.e. nearer the bridge. This is, I always found this a little bit, not a gimmick, but I found it a little bit amusing. But it does actually make you aware, because as soon as you bow this way, you do hit the paper, and I think it increases awareness. It definitely does. It's quite useful for young cellists, I think, and it's also quite useful, I think, when a cellist moves up a size in instruments. So obviously if you go from a half size to a 3/4 size, everything is bigger, so bowing nearer the bridge is suddenly requires a different sort of physical reach, quite literally. So yeah, it's a little bit silly, but it definitely can make one think about where one is bowing, and it can increase awareness. So that's quite fun, I think. Yeah, so Simon Fisher, the violin teacher, pretty famous violin teacher, has many videos about bowing, particularly online, which you can easily find online. So he has numbered the 5 points of contact. He's called them 1 for right by the bridge and 5 over the fingerboard. And 1 is at the bridge, 2 is in the neighborhood of the bridge, 3 is at the center point, 4 is in the neighborhood of the fingerboard, and 5 is at, or I guess on, the fingerboard. So he's come up with those, and he has also come up with a few different exercises, which I guess I should put this back in, which are specifically designed for contact points 2, 3, 1, sort of nearish the bridge and very near the bridge. He calls them pressure exercises. The word pressure actually is one that I avoid using because it conjures up images of tension, but it's basically a sort of pulsing which you do between forte and piano. But it's also worth, I think, practicing scales slowly, very near the bridge, because finding the focus and intensity near the bridge it's not the easiest of things to do. It's much easier to find too much focus and intensity, and then later on to find different colors from a position of having found and being able to find an intensity in one sound. So yeah, I think these exercises are definitely good as warm-ups. So I think it can also be worth practicing passages out of context, taking a passage which requires great focus in sound, intensity, etc., and playing that passage very slowly, very near the bridge, just so we can search for that intensity and really listen out for it. But I think actually what this mainly does is it teaches us to feel for the point of contact, because at the bridge the string is incredibly resistant. We're right on top of the bridge here. The string is very resistant. As we move away, the string flexes more as the moment of the force, if this is, the bridge is a sort of fulcrum, the moment of the force obviously increases as we get away from the bridge. So the string becomes more flexible under the hand, and when you're bowing you can feel this flexibility or resistance, and then if you've been practicing these exercises you can start to seek out the resistance when you need to find it within the context of a piece. So I think that is something that is well worth practicing these exercises for. It's actually for the feel. Yeah, so obviously I've spoken quite a bit about high sustained playing. There are obviously moments where lower down on the cello we need to sustain, and we would probably moderate our bow a little bit towards the bridge. We might even start to push in some contexts, if it's loud, if the passage is loud on the C string, we might even try and search for a slight edge in the sound, which can actually, I think, add something to the character. Probably ought to point out that obviously situations, contexts vary, and there's definitely huge room for shades of grey, shades between these two extreme points. So, for example, when you're playing accents, you might need to move a little bit away from the bridge to get the string to actually speak, so that the hair can grab the string at the very front of the note. But yeah, certainly passage work. You don't want to be too near to the bridge unless you want to maybe have a little bit of bite maybe in the sound. So you might just move in and out. It's a sort of range that becomes possible depending on the context, and if you push on one edge of that range, you can have a bit more focus, and you push back to the other edge, you can have a little less focus. So yeah, it's finding the range within which you can then find the colour within that I think is important. Yeah, so certainly accents though, even higher, highish on the A string, you can't be right at contact point level 1. So obviously within the context of a piece or a phrase even, we are likely to have to vary our point of contact considerably. For example, the register might change, the dynamic might change, the phrasing, we might want to do something specific with a phrase, give it a sense of direction in a particular way, and that will vary our point of contact then. And perhaps the other thing though is the actual bowing that we're doing. So if we're having to fit in quite a few notes, quite a few beats into a down bow, and then we have an up bow where we need a faster bow to get back nearer to the heel, we might actually almost create a circle. It was actually pointed out to me from a famous cellist in a master class that we can basically do a sort of circle here sometimes in certain contexts where we need to sustain on the down bow and get through the bow on the up bow. And I'll just play you an example or two that demonstrates this. So obviously there are various other areas we could look into. Harmonics, for example. Harmonics tend to ring really nicely if we bow nearer the bridge, but if we use a faster bow away from the bridge, as long as they speak, they can have a sort of bell-like quality. Chords, sometimes 4-note chords,
might require one's point of contact being away from the bridge at the base of the chord for the lower portion of the chord, and then perhaps nearer the bridge as we're sustaining the top of the chord. Another big area that probably deserves an entire video in itself would be shifting. So when we shift, we might vary our bow speed, we might vary our point of contact to either give the shift a certain character or colour, or hide the shift perhaps, or whatever the context may be. So yes, obviously there's a lot more that we can explore. This is obviously very much an introduction. I hope it has been of interest though, and enjoy the rest of the convention. Thank you very much.